I want everybody to take a look. I know everybody sees us today as grown adults, but we are fighting for the children that were abandoned and left behind in the reckoning.
Last time I stood here, I made a promise to all survivors watching. If those in power refused to release the truth, we would start uncovering it ourselves.
I was in 9th grade. I was hopeful for life and what the future had held for me. He stole a lot from me at 14.
President Trump signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act on Wednesday after Congress voted to publicly release the files connected to the late convicted pedophile and accused sex trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this happened after a massive outcry from the victims, a small bipartisan group of lawmakers and the public who basically forced Congress and Trump's hand. Before Trump signed the bill, the Epstein estate released a trove of his emails showing his correspondence with Republicans, Democrats, Silicon Valley billionaires, spiritual thought leaders, and international heads of state. And while that's not evidence of guilt, it does show how entrenched he was in the system of power. But at the heart of all of this are the victims, and not just Epstein's victims, but victims of human and sex trafficking across this country and worldwide. It is a deeply disturbing practice that happens more often than you would think. The numbers are startling. Here's my conversation with a remarkable woman who survived human trafficking as a child, managed to escape, thrive, and now who helps hundreds of survivors each year. But before we unpack all that, if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit subscribe. Joining me today to discuss this very difficult and sensitive topic is Dr. Tonya Stafford. She is founder and CEO of the nonprofit It's Going to Be Okay and survivor of human trafficking. Dr. Stafford, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I want to jump right into your story before we get into what's going on with the Epstein files and this whole situation. When survivors share their stories with the public, we get to put a face to the story, and we see our daughters, our brothers, sisters, friends, and I think that really hits home when survivors decide to come forward. Can you talk about walk me through your journey and how you became first a victim of human trafficking, and then you were able to escape that and then become a survivor?
So my story began in Dallas, Texas. I'm a native of Dallas, Texas. Born and raised here in Texas. I was raised with my grandmother, by my grandmother. So human trafficking was not supposed to be, oh, that's my journey. I had a normal childhood. I was raised with the two parents, with my grandmother and grandfather. I wasn't a fatherless child. And my mom had always been addicted to crack. So when crack epidemic hit in the 80s, so we were a part of the 80s babies that when the crack epidemic happened, most of the grandmothers were taking their children, their grandchildren. And so my grandmother just fell in line to take my mom's children to basically raise us to be productive members of society. And when my mom said she got herself together and she wanted her children back, my grandmother had no legal recourse to keep us. So we had to go with my mother, which she was clean at that time. She was clean at that time. And we went with her to a part of, not too far from where my grandmother was, South Dallas. And we adapted, very well. And then she ended up bringing this man home and said that, she was getting married. We didn't really understand a lot of it, but okay, we have a father. And she said, well, no, you're not going to see your father anymore. And so all of my protection went out the door then. They did get married. And as soon as they got married, he began to molest and rape us. And so that's where my trauma started, was around 10 years old, getting raped, molested, and abused by him, beating the boys. So he started with that. And then we ended up homeless. We ended up homeless because she fell back into the crack epidemic again and the addiction. So I knew how to take care of my siblings because my grandmother taught me how to take care of my siblings. Wasn't anything that was new to us. We all helped each other. So Big Mama was the anchor of our family. And so I took care of my siblings when she would disappear for 6 months at a time. I took care of my siblings, combed their hair, cooked for them, made sure they got to school, and I went to school. My school was my safe haven at that time. My school was safe haven, even though I got in trouble in school, but I still got all A's and B's. And my grandmother, she didn't know a lot that was going on with us because we were isolated from her. We moved around a lot, hotel to hotel when we were homeless. So he would get a room for them, his friends, and then he would get a room to take us in to rape and molest us. So that's how we lived for probably about 6 months. And then we ended up in the projects where my perpetrator happened to be frequent. He was coming to the projects to see who he could get and spotted me, didn't know it, and found out that my mom was an addict, what she liked, crack. She liked beer, so he was feeding her all of that before the transaction took. So I don't know how much I was sold for. I just know that the transaction happened. He raped me, and then I was impregnated. So that was the plan all along, is for me to serve, be a servant to him, have children, do nothing else but have children, and that's it. Serve, cook, clean, pretty much do everything I was told to do, and that's what I did. I did that. I was
And how old were
13.
you at that time?
13. I was 13. I just turned 13 when I was raped, like violently raped. And they had gotten us drunk. And then I didn't know we didn't even know that it was a lot of teenage girls that was there. And it was some wine cooler, never had drank in my life. And I was 13 and he raped me. He raped me, impregnated me. And I remember going home and just wishing that it was all a bad dream. It wasn't a bad dream. It was reality. Didn't know I was pregnant until my mom said, bitch, you're pregnant. I didn't even know what pregnant was because I was 13. I didn't know anything. Didn't know anything about what my body was going to do. I just barely got in a cycle. So didn't know a lot. And they hid the pregnancy because I fell into the cycle and the statistics of teenage pregnancy. So back in the 80s, teenage pregnancy was so high in our community. A lot of Black girls were getting pregnant, missing. A lot of us was missing, but nobody was saying anything. Having babies was pretty much the norm within the projects. But they hid my pregnancy because of his age. He was 26 and I was 13. And I was getting ready to I turned 14 after I had her. I had her and turned 14. Then he took possession of me because he had given her last payment. And that's where a lot of my abuse and trauma started again, all over again. Is now I'm in a foreign house and I was literally 5 minutes from where I was sold. So I was in a project and he took me, it was 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes from where I was. It was 5 minutes from where I was. Went to the first house. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It was him, his grandmother, and their dog. And it was just that you can't tell anybody you're here because he'll go to jail. Just do what you're told to do.
So there are other adults pressuring you to stay silent.
Yeah. Well, they said because he would go to jail, they actually just wanted the baby, but they said my mom said that they had to take me too because she wasn't gonna just allow them to just take the baby and not me too because she didn't want me either. So that's how it went. I remember the day that I got in the car with him, I didn't have a choice. It was go or you can survive or die. So I chose to survive. I got in the car, took a deep breath. I was crying a lot. And then he slapped me and said, you need to stop all that. And I was just telling him, like, you didn't have to hit me. You don't have to hit me. Because I didn't like that because my mom hit me a lot. So I just told him I'll do what I was told to do. And he said, that's what you need to do. Do what you're told to do, when you're told to do, and how you're told to do it. And that's what I did. I just followed instructions, what I was supposed to do: cook, clean, serve him, be in a bed by a certain time to have sex, what time to have dinner on the table, everything. So I did all of that. I did everything he told me to do. And then I got pregnant with my second child. I was barely 16 years old. It's barely 16. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get away from them? How am I going to do this? Wasn't going to get away. I wasn't going to get away from him. And he took me out of school. So ended up saying, okay, this is my life. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I accepted that just so that I could stay alive, literally stay alive. And I remember thinking I could talk to somebody or I can tell somebody. But when I went into the second hospital, I was trying to tell the doctor that, I was being held against my will. But he said, what are you doing having all these kids? I was just like, I was on my second child and I was Black. So that wasn't going to work. And I said, well, you just be quiet, because he said if I said anything, I would get it worse when I get back to the house. So I just got quiet and had the baby. He made all the medical decisions. I couldn't have anything to help me to deliver the children. I just had them naturally. We would get up and we would leave. So then I became pregnant again. Not too long after that, I was pregnant again. So my third reason for living was my son. It was my last son that I had with him. And I just decided, okay, you got to just take it, do whatever you told to do, however you told to do it, just to survive. So that's what I was doing, surviving. I was surviving.
Did he ever force you to, or sell you to anyone else, or force you to be intimate with other people, or were you just with him?
I was with him for a few years, and then the dynamics changed. And this is where it got really crazy, because we didn't know when I went to court that when he sent me to California for someone else, is that I was trafficked across state lines. And so it became a federal crime, but we didn't know that because trafficking wasn't being spoken of until the act was put in place in 1997. So I was with, he sent me to someone else, and then he had his way with me, and then he sent me back to Texas. So a lot of people don't know that part of my story that's in my book. I do talk about that in my book. It's because that's another part of my story. And I came back to Texas. It was worse. It was worse than when I was here the first time. And it's because of all the other stuff that was happening in California with that other person, because it was a family member. It was his family. It was his family member. Okay. Yes, it was his family member. So I endured that. We were in a neighborhood, looks just like yours and mine. It looks just like yours and mine. The house looked normal from the outside, but hell on the inside. It was a little place called Pleasant Grove. So in Dallas, we have the little subdivision. So right. Pleasant Grove was where I ended up at. And I remember saying, I'm going to die here. I'm just going to die here because nobody knows I'm here. My mom had changed her number. I had no contact with my siblings. So I didn't know where anybody was, but I was just trying to survive. And no school, no nothing.
And that's where, we had talked before how you were telling me a story about how a stranger or a neighbor intervened.
Yes, that was what I was getting to. Yeah, right. She kept just being persistent. She would hear, because the houses were so close together. If people want to see where I was kept at, they can watch Be the One documentary. done by the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, to bring awareness to human trafficking. So our houses was that close, but you could hear the abuse. You could hear what was going on next door. And every day I would come out, take the trash out, do what I needed to do, because that was my job. Cut the yard, take the trash out, cook, clean, make sure everything was in order. And she would speak to me every day, every day. I thought she was crazy because I was like, she's not getting a response back from me, because he told me he speak for me. You don't say anything, you don't do anything, and I didn't. And she was persistent every day. Hey, how you doing? How are you today? And I was like, she's really crazy. So yeah, she's keeps speaking and I'm not speaking. And this one particular time he beat me because I forgot to finish cutting the yard, and I forgot to take out the trash because I was busy with the children and it was hot outside. And I forgot, and when he came in, he just started beating me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could barely walk. I could barely walk. And I remember going out to take the trash out, and she said, are you okay? Are you okay? And I said, well, it's now or never. So I said, no, I'm not. And she said, well, I know. And she came over, she walked over and she said, how old are you? So I told her how old I was. And then she said, where's your mom? I said, well, she's the one that sold me. And she said, what? I said, yeah. So, well, do you have sisters and brothers? I said, I haven't seen them. And I asked her what year it was. I was just like, and I started counting. I said, well, I've been here probably 10 years now. And she said, well, you don't know where they are. And I didn't know where they were. I said, no, I had no contact with them. And she said, well, I can help you. And I was just like, yeah, she's crazy because she said she can help me. But I believed her. It was now or never. It was tell her. And he would always tell me he would kill me and bury me in the backyard, and nobody would find me, and nobody would, they would think I ran off with someone. So that was his plan. And I just told her everything. I told her everything. Like, he says he's going to bury me in the backyard. If that happens, that's where I'm at, and tell everybody this is where I was. If you could tell them my story. And she was like, no, you'll tell your own story one day. And I was like, this lady is crazy. I don't see how I'm getting out. And she's like, do you have an education? I was like, no. So I can help you with that too. And I said, I don't think you can help me with that. So I'm so far behind. And she was saying, how far did you get? And so I said, well, I got to the 9th grade before my second child. And she said, well, I can help you. So she started taking me to school. She would take me to school. She would watch the kids while I go in the center, take my test, and I passed all my tests. And he didn't even know it. He knew nothing. I would get back to the house before he would come back.
Oh,
And
okay.
when my diploma came, I gave it to her. I ended up getting a GED, and I gave it to her. They had a little graduation ceremony. She took me to it. I was able to do that and went back, didn't tell anybody. And she was the one that the day that I was rescued by her is the day he almost killed me. Because we always talked and said, if it get really bad, throw something out the window, or just let me know that you need help and I'll call the police. And police had been there many a times, but it was for domestic violence, not human trafficking. And
So
they would just make him leave.
So how did you eventually able to truly escape and get away from him? And
Her,
was he held accountable? Her.
yep. The day that she actually came in to help me and rescue me is the day he almost killed me. So it was getting really chaotic that day, a lot of screaming, a lot of crying. My kids were crying a lot. I remember it like it was yesterday because it's a part of my life. It's etched into my life. And he kept saying he was going to strangle me. He was going to kill me. He had told other people how he was going to kill me. And I was really scared. So I was trying to get away and I wasn't able to get away. And he threw me into the hallway. And I remember hitting the wall. And saying, this is not good. And I'm going to die today. And then he started choking me unconscious. But when I came to, I heard her voice calling me. She was just, Tonya, 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 open your eyes, open your eyes. And I think she thought I was dead too. And I opened my eyes, and that was the first time I seen her cry. She was crying. She was kneeled over me crying because I could hear my kids subconsciously. They were screaming. They were trying to wake me up too. And she kept saying, open your eyes, open your eyes. And she has this really calm voice. But I could hear her. And she said, open your eyes, baby, open your eyes, open your eyes. So I opened my eyes, and I was kind of stunned, still stunned. And she was crying. So, what are you crying? It was the first time I seen her cry. And she was like, I thought you were dead. And the kids, she was trying to calm my kids down. And she said, just kind of sit up. The police was on their way. The ambulance was on their way. There's a lot going on. And then she said, are you I just want to make sure you're okay. And she's breathe, breathe, breathe. So I'm breathing, trying to breathe. And I looked down, and she had a gun. I was like, what are you doing with a gun? And she said, I came to save you. Like, I was coming to save you. I didn't know what else to do. I just knew that I had to get over here. And I said, well, where's he at? He ran out. He ran past her. And so I said, well, why you didn't shoot him? So why didn't you shoot him on his way out? And she said, I couldn't because of your kids. Your kids will never forget that I was the one that killed their dad. And because they were still their dad. Regardless of how they got here, they were still part of me, and that was their dad. And so I said, no, you should have just shot him. And she was like, no. I said, okay. So we went on from there. That's police came, and then I ended up in a shelter. Hush, I'm sorry. She's barking. So I ended up in a shelter, a domestic violence shelter. And that was the first time I knew shelters existed. That was the first time I knew shelters existed. So I ended up just pretty much adapting. I went to the shelter. I got lawyers. Lawyers was involved, domestic violence lawyers. And the shelter, the one thing that they did was they put us in therapy. I didn't know about therapy. I had no knowledge of therapy because I was told don't talk to anybody. And I liked it. And my kids didn't get a chance to lie. So they didn't get a chance to say, I didn't get a chance to say, shh, don't tell that, or tell them this, or tell them that. They were singing like little birds, and they were in therapy as well. And we just started healing from there. Trial. I did have a trial. He was found. My mom was located. They were all brought to court. And it was a lot going on, even during trial, because they took me to trial actually this month, the month of November. I went to trial 20 something years ago. And I remember saying, they're going to get it. They will get it. They are going to get it. I want the judge to throw the book at them. Get to trial. Everything's coming out. She said what she did. He said what he did. He said that he bought me. He said that, didn't know. The judge asked how much. He's like, I don't remember. And my mom was saying, yeah, that pretty much happened the way that I told it. But there was nothing, nobody can do anything to her because I was grown. I was barely 23 years old. And I remember the judge saying that she endangered a child. He's statutory rape, sodomy, everything. They were just throwing out a lot of things. And he said, well, hold on, I got to take a recess. And so I was waiting on him to come back. I was literally waiting on him to come back. He came back and he said, I'm so sorry. The hospital system failed you. The school system failed you. And today I have to fail you. The statute of limitation ran out November the 27th, 1996.
Oh no.
1996. They took me to court on my 23rd birthday. If we had went 2 days before or a week before, then he would have gotten some time. But since it was the statute of limitation was 10 years, they went from 13 to 23. So I had just turned 23 on November the 27th, 1996. I just turned 23 years old.
So did they both walk?
I was issued protective orders. They did walk out the court. I was issued protective orders that was put in place. And then the judge told me he still got supervised visits because he was the father of the children and I couldn't violate the order. Mm-hmm. So I walked out angry then. I was very angry, saying, really, this is what's happening? And my neighbor, she was crying. She's like, come on, baby, we gotta go. And I was angry. I just wanted something to happen to everybody. But she said, you gotta just, get yourself together. You got your children to raise your children, and that's it. Raise your children.
I want to go back to your neighbor for a bit because, she is, would you consider her your savior?
She is. I would say she was my saving grace. She was my savior. She was my savior. Saved me.
She really looked out for you and was watching. So I wanted you to ask you about that in terms of, for people that are listening, if they may suspect something is going on but are not sure, what are some things that they can look out for that are red flags that something is not right with a situation like this?
Isolation. The neighbor's not talking to you. The neighbor's not friendly with you. No eye contact. If you hear something that is out the ordinary, just like, oh, they're fighting, or it's just an argument or something like that, no, go investigate or call somebody to investigate for you. So things like that. If it seems off, it's off. No eye contact, no speaking. They're just coming and going. And if you see a lot of traffic at that house. So now when it's trafficking victims, it's a lot of traffic at the house, parties, different cars coming and going. If you don't see the same person on a regular basis and it's different females in and out, or just a lot of females that's in there and it's a whole lot of cars coming and it's only males that's visiting the house, you should suspect something. Mm-hmm.
And for you, enduring all that you've been to, and clearly now you are thriving and you're helping others. At that time, I can imagine you are just beginning your healing process. Then you have to go to court and kind of like relive that trauma all over again. And then, like the judge said, the system had to fail you again. What is that healing process like for you and for your children as you're moving on from that and trying to recover from everything that you've been through? Because I can imagine it's always going to be a work in progress. Or do you reach a point?
No, you don't reach the point. It's one day at a time. Healing is a process. Healing is a process, and it's a process that you have to work on. So I've been in therapy for over 20 years. So we've all had therapy, been in therapy, still in therapy. That's a way of life for me. And it's not because of my past. I've already dealt with that, but it's other things in my life that I have to deal with. And then what I deal with on a regular basis with helping other survivors. So no, healing is a process. It's a one day, minute by minute, second by second, hour by hour, but I had good therapists as well. So that's why I am resilient and successful in what I do, is because I had the therapy to help me to become, successful in what I do. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Therapy is the way of life. So that process was a process. I had to work through a whole lot of mommy issues. Even though my dad was in my life, he died before anything happened to me. Basically, mommy issue, daddy issues. And I worked through that. And my children had to work through what they were going to hear in my life like what I had been through eventually. So yeah, that's what it looks like. That process looks like a lot of therapy. And therapy I love. I love therapists. I love therapy because it is, and I do talk therapy. I did a play therapy. I did a lot of therapy, but I like talk therapy. I like talk therapy. So that's what it looked like. That process was therapy for me and my
Yeah,
family. Hmm.
I want to jump over for a minute before we get into your nonprofit to the Epstein situation. And speaking of therapy, a lot of his accusers, when they came forward, some of them talked about that during that press conference. And one of the things that struck out to me was that the women showed pictures of themselves as they were at the age that they were victimized. And I thought that was really, really important, because sometimes people are hearing a story and they're seeing the person as they are now, but that's not how they were then. I
Yeah.
want to get your thoughts on that in terms of why that was an important move for them to make, to show those pictures of themselves as teenagers.
Because that's where the trauma started. That you have to go back to when it started and what age it started, because that's where everything stops. Everything stops right there. My trauma started at 10 years old. It stopped. Everything stopped for me. So at 10, I was being groomed. I was being abused. So your mentality stops there too. Is because you don't know what to do. So you have to go back to where it started, how it started, what you look like then. You are just a child. I looked like a child. I was playing like a child. So you have to go back to where it started. And when where it started can help you to heal going forward. But you got to deal with the past in order to deal with the present. So it was a powerful move because you get to see me how I was before the trauma. This is how I look now. I don't look like what I've been through, but this is how I looked when the trauma started. It stopped right there. Everything stops. Everything stops in that world. Everything stops. Right there is, I got to deal with the child, the the inner child, the little girl that was robbed of her childhood.
Mm.
That's why.
In all of this, a lot of people are calling for the names of the list of names that were involved with Epstein to be released. And I'd watched some of the interviews with the some of the victims and survivors, and they're very hesitant to do that for various reasons. A lot of them are talking about how the power dynamics of the situation and why that can be hard. And it just got me to thinking in general. I can imagine it's difficult for someone to name their abuser,
Mhm.
and especially in that dynamic. Can you kind of talk about that so that people can understand why it's not as easy as just saying a name?
It's not easy saying the name because you are looking at, you have to face that person or those persons that have abused you. And sometimes you're not ready for that. You're just not ready to face your accusers and abusers at that particular time. So I'm not going to say their name because I'm still traumatized by that name. So I'd rather not say that name. And then it's a lot of guilt and shame comes with a lot of abusers that has a that have abused you. They make you feel shame. They make you feel guilty, like it was your fault that they did this to you, or you should have been glad somebody was interested in you like that. So with abusers, that's how it happened. And with victims, they're ashamed. They have a lot of guilt and shame about the abuse that happened to them. So you won't say their name until you're ready to say their name. And then you have to understand that a lot of victims and survivors have trauma bonds to a lot of people as well. And so I don't want you to know their name because I still care for them. I still love them. Trauma bonds are really real. Trauma bonds are real. Yeah. That's why.
That's why. And the bill Trump signed, it bars officials from withholding or redacting information that's based on what they're saying, quote, embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. And I was wondering, because I can imagine everyone's paying attention to it, but someone that has been through this before is probably, I can imagine that community's more keyed into this than everyone else. And are you concerned that that aspect will be followed? You know, now they're talking about AD Pam Bondi recently directed a U.S. attorney to investigate Trump's political enemies that may be tied to this instead of going after just everyone. And I was going to ask you, what kind of message do you think that sends the victims if the people who are accused are being cherry picked as to who is going to be held accountable?
Well, it does a disservice. It does a disservice. And even with her being a woman, it's such a double-edged sword with why are you doing what you're doing? And why are you picking and choosing those that you think should be brought to the forefront? Everybody needs to be brought to the forefront to help be held accountable. It doesn't matter who it is. Trump, it doesn't matter who it is. Republicans, Democrats, police officers, firefighters, actors, actresses, whoever needs to be brought to the forefront to be held accountable. But the message it sends to a victim is they really don't care. It really doesn't matter that you are picking and choosing them, but not the head people that did this. So it sends a message of justice will not be served. Justice will not be served.
Another aspect of this that struck me, and this was before the bill was signed, and I believe his estate had released a trove of the emails, of Epstein's emails, and you could see how like vast his social, uh, his network was. I mean, there was Republicans, Democrats, spiritual thought leaders, Silicon Valley billionaires, heads of state of other nations. I mean, there were so many people, and and again, that's not an accusation of guilt on their part yet. That it's just, this is who he was corresponding with. And it made me think about just the human trafficking and sex trafficking industry in general. I don't think people realize how prevalent it is and how wide that network is. Can you talk about that?
It's a $1 billion industry. So think about it like this. And anyone that's listening, you can sell a drug one time, but you can sell a human being over and over and over again, especially if that human being is a young girl or a young child. You get more out of a young girl or a young child. Life expectancy for a victim is about 7 years. It's a $1 billion industry because money exchanges over how many times that person is sold. But just think about this as well. The many bodies that you can get, the grooming, the recruiting, everything, the false promises. And this person is sleeping with this person, that person, but they're getting money in exchange for it. It's a $1 billion industry. And some of those buyers, billionaires, millionaires, they live out their fantasies on these children. Is why it's so grotesque. Is because they're living out their fantasies on children, women and children, girls and boys. That's a whole nother show.
What does society need to understand about sex trafficking? And what do we need to do to curb this, or just put some type of, I mean, because as you said, it's $1 billion industry. What needs to happen to truly put a dent on this practice?
What needs to happen now is more education, more awareness, to teach our communities what human trafficking is and sex trafficking is. It's really a preventable mess. It's just preventable. Prevention and education. Prevention and education. That's it.
Tougher laws too. I know
Mhm.
Texas, we really had some, at one point, there would be situations where the person at the time, someone would get arrested for prostitution before they figured out that this person was being trafficked, and they would get a tougher sentence than the John would. And so there were uh, laws put in place to try to put tougher penalties on, like maybe the pimp or the John and things of that nature. And do you think we've got further to go in that respect in terms of how much time people are getting when they go through the legal system?
We got a long way to go. We got a long way to go because victims are still being victimized by the systems, the very systems that's supposed to help them. Just like with the Epstein, the system doesn't work. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So we got a long way to go for a lot of help for the survivors, not just the convictions, but what about the resources for them? What about the mental resources for them? What about a safe place to call home? Because some of them can't go home. Some of them don't have family members that's safe to go back to. What about that? What about the resources for victims of human trafficking and sex trafficking? We got a long way to go. They are often re-victimized and re-traumatized by the very system that's supposed to help us. Got a long way to go.
Why do you think this particular case, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, why do you think this is the one that has really piqued the public's interest?
Is because it was a lot of noise made by it. And because unfortunately, I think it was only one Black female that was in there, and she was
Right.
of a lighter skin tone. So you have, and for those that'll say, well, race doesn't have anything to do with it. Yes, it does. Because a lot of victims that don't look like us, they get more attention than a Black survivor would, or a Black advocate would, because of the skin tone. Unfortunately, that's really the truth. That's really the truth about it.
And you see that also in like kidnapping cases and other,
Yes.
we've seen
Yeah.
that in other areas
Yeah.
as well.
More
And
attention is brought to it because of the skin color, but also the awareness that has been made around this. It yields us some more attention. The other survivors that look like me, that are out here fighting for laws to be changed, and that are really boots on the ground to help us. Mm-hmm.
and speaking of boots on the ground and advocacy, talk to me about your nonprofit. It's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. It's my baby. I have birthed her from 2014 until now. We rescue, restore, and rebuild. We provide healing, housing, and hope. That's what we do. I do active rescues. I've been doing it for over 11 years. I've been doing this for 20 years, over 20 years. And it's something that I love to do. So we provide housing for up to 2 years for victims and their children. So we don't just take them in, we take their children in too, because some of them are coming with children. The program is amazing. We have had over 20 to graduate just in the last year. It's just been amazing work that we have been doing here in the southern sector of Dallas, but Dallas and surrounding areas across the country. As you know, just being worldwide, I'm excited about just how we're growing. Sarah's Village has been introduced, so to be able to provide more housing and hope and healing for more victims. So boots on the ground, in the trenches, out there, plucking them right on out, giving them the resources that they need. And that is healthiness, that is therapy, food, clothing. This way they don't go back. They don't go back. So this is what our program exists for. It's going to be okay exists to provide the housing, hope, and healing for them, to make sure that they have a great start. So they are required to save at least 16 or 20,000. So most of our girls, and I say 16 because one of my survivors, she said, I only saved 16,000. So you think I'm ready to go? I was just like, do you know how many people don't have $16,000? So they don't have to pay anything while they're in the program. They can work. They work and save their money. They learn how to drive. They get their driver's license. They do everything with us. So we're so excited about just what we're providing for them. And that's some hope. Our word is our bond. And we provide that hope for them. Yes.
And I'm going to put the link to It's Going to Be Okay down below. And how can people that are listening help?
So we need volunteers. We need volunteers. We need money. We need funding. We need Pampers. We need wipes, clothing for the girls to start over. We need a lot of things, but most of all, we need funding to continue to help support them. That's the major issue right now, is funding for a lot of us. You can go to our website and give. Go to igtbok.org and give. Sign up to volunteer for the events. And if you can host an event for us, host an event for us. I'm sure there are people that want to do something, you don't know what to do. So if you have this great idea that, you know what, I want to do this event. I just want to do this event. And let us be the recipients of that event. That's how you can help as well. So your great ideas can be put to use for a great cause. Let us be your cause. Yes. That's how you can help.
Wonderful. And again, I'm going to put the link down below. And again, Dr. Stafford, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And the work that you do is amazing. You are a remarkable woman.
Thank you. Thank you. Just trying to do my part here on earth, leaving it a little bit better than it found me.